A year ago in the university town of Charlottesville in Virginia, America confronted a frightening reality.
You will not replace us!
We're here today to announce charges in the largest college admissions scam ever prosecuted by the Department of Justice.
A new lawsuit against Harvard University is taking aim at legacy admission.
Minority advocacy groups are suing the school over its legacy admissions.
Don't stop at affirmative action. End college legacy admissions too.
With the Supreme Court's dismissal of affirmative action and the Department of Education's declaration of a civil rights investigation into Harvard University preferential treatment of legacy students with family ties, the issue has become more important than ever. Although it may appear to be a recent issue, it has only been about a century since American schools and universities began considering family relationships and other factors such as extracurricular activities, interviews, and standardized test results into admission choices. So here's how anti-Jewish discrimination fueled modern college admissions long before affirmative action ever existed. Prior to the late 19th century, a college education was largely out of reach for all but wealthy Protestants who established universities and colleges to prepare their sons for cultural and community leadership. Though these institutions preferred the sons of past graduates, their admissions requirements were relatively lenient. Few who could afford to pay were turned away in an era before widespread public schooling. However, beginning in the 1840s, waves of immigration brought a huge number of Catholics and Jews into the country, changing the makeup of American society. According to sociologists Deborah L. Cole and James D. Davison, as these immigrants surged into the country, their presence threatened white Protestant organizations that had previously dominated mainstream culture. As a result, anti-Catholic and anti-Semitic sentiments found their way into a variety of mechanisms devised in response to demographic changes. This quickly spread to college admissions. Catholics immediately established their universities and urged members of their faith to enroll. As a result, Jewish college enrollment sparked significant concern at predominantly Protestant universities. Historically, institutions permitted some Jewish students, but only those whom administrators judged were of correct social class and had assimilated into a mainstream American culture. Newer immigrants from predominantly Jewish communities did not fit that mold in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Therefore, elite Protestants attempted to close ranks. University officials who subscribed to long-held preconceptions of Jews as tribal, manipulative, and socially undesirable were concerned that admitting Jews would tarnish the school's reputation. Furthermore, they were opposed to their sons being educated alongside them. Money alone was no longer enough to gain access to elite social circles. According to historian John Hyam, Protestant elites of the time grasped at social distinctions that were more than pecuniary, including the cult of genealogy. Suddenly, institutions including social clubs, sports organizations, prep schools, and even neighborhoods emphasized family connections as a requirement for admission, thus locking Jews out. It was the same in higher institutions, where administrators were concerned about the increased Jewish enrollment. As a result, they began to consider how to limit Jewish candidates without jeopardizing public funds or jeopardizing their reputations. Yale University was one of these institutes. Yale admissions head Robert Nelson Corwin wrote in 1922, "There appears to be no doubt that the university as a whole has about all of the race that it can well handle." Even though Jewish students outperformed their peers in terms of academic achievements, Corwin also wrote that members of this race graduated from college as alien in morals and manners as they were upon admission. To limit the number of Jews, he suggested that Yale establish non-intellectual requirements such as letters of recommendation, in-person interviews, and psychological testing. Corwin was not alone. From Harvard to Rutgers, Columbia to Tufts, top college institutions began trying anything and everything to influence the makeup of their student bodies. To limit the number of Jews in new classes, some instituted quotas. Others concentrated their recruiting efforts in locations where fewer Jewish populations lived and began paying closer attention to extracurricular activities that indicated applicants' socioeconomic class and faith. More admission standards meant more reasons to reject students, as well as a mechanism to conceal anti-Semitic school policies. When more Jews received academic scholarships, schools such as Harvard and Yale phased them out of favor of financial aid. They also embraced the new field of psychological testing, such as the Thorndike test for mental alertness, which judged ability rather than their achievement. Education historians Jim Horn and Denise Wilburn wrote, "The primitive and biased test effectively reduced Jewish enrollment at Columbia by half," noting that many such tests were developed by eugenicists looking for a purported objective way to quantify the structural racism of the day and have it accepted as scientific. Another new requirement that became fairly widespread during the time period was the photograph. Historian Marianne Sanua writes that at Columbia, one fraternity publication satirically recommended applicants dye their hair blonde, pretend they were taller, and have photos taken that minimize stereotypical Jewish facial features to avoid newly tightened admission requirements. Finally, universities adopted internal legacy admission practices, actively recruiting relatives or alumni and giving them an advantage over other applicants. In 1922, Dartmouth College wrote in a magazine publication, "All properly qualified sons of Dartmouth alumni and Dartmouth College officers will be accepted." Applicants were also required to submit multiple letters of recommendations for Dartmouth alumni, with the school promising to prioritize men who plainly possesses the qualities of leadership or qualities of outstanding promises over those qualified by high scholarship ranks, but with no evidence of positive qualities otherwise. Many institutions phased away their more blatantly anti-Semitic guidelines as anti-Jewish discrimination became less common in the wake of World War II and the Holocaust, as well as with the rise of the Civil Rights Movement. However, many of the restrictions imposed to limit Jewish applications remained in force. Standardized testing and interviews are still common college admission procedures, and today's institutions of higher learning continue to admit more wealthy students. According to one recent study, children from the top 0.1% of the income bracket are more than twice as likely to gain admissions to Ivy League schools as poor students with the same test scores, and 46% of their advantage can be attributed to admissions policies that give legacy students preferential treatment. Even though several universities such as Amherst, Johns Hopkins, and Wesleyan have announced they will no longer use the system, it continues to be widely utilized today. According to a 2018 poll conducted by Inside Higher Education, 42% of admissions directors at private colleges and universities stated legacy status is a consideration in their admissions process, compared to 6% at public institutions.
Feds have opened an investigation into Harvard's policy on legacy admissions. Of course, that gives an edge to applicants with family ties to Harvard. A Boston nonprofit complained to the Department of Education that since Harvard uses legacy status as an admissions factor, that essentially discriminates against people of color. Harvard's alumni is overwhelmingly white.
Harvard is one of those colleges, and its legacy admissions policy is currently under investigation by federal civil rights investigators. The Harvard Crimson reported that more than 14% of its 2022 freshman class said that they were legacy students, and self-identified legacies were more likely to be white. Over a third of Harvard students with one or more parents reported a combined family income of $500,000 or more per year. Now, will legacy admissions follow in the footsteps of affirmative action? There is no way of knowing until the conclusion of the Department of Education's reported investigations are made public. Hey guys, we come to the end of the video. What are your thoughts on the history of university legacy admissions? Let me know in the comment section below. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the like button if you enjoyed the video. Until then, we'll see you next time.